Good morning and aloha, or more accurately, good afternoon, at least for me from Capitol Hill. I just red-eyed back a little unexpectedly from Hawaii, just arrived a few hours ago for a critical vote on lifting our debt ceiling, which of course has been under negotiation for months now, unfortunately, and now we have a vote. And so I'm back here in DC to get that done as we need to get it done. I am Congressman Ed Case. I represent Hawaii's great first congressional district, which is the city of Honolulu, all the way from Makapu'u Point in the east to Mililani, the borders of Wahiawa in the north, and then down through Waipahu and Eva Beach out to Kapolei in the west. And so that is my district. My colleague Jill Takuda represents the second congressional district, but I think we fairly both can say that we represent the entire state, each of us. And welcome to my live webinar. I'm really happy to be back with you. And this one, we are focusing on our nation's and our Hawaii's small businesses. This is National Small Business Month. Each May is National Small Business Month when we recognize that our economy, the largest and most vital in the world, is not built on the mega corporations, but on the backs of small businesses, millions and millions and tens of millions of small businesses throughout our country, everywhere from sole proprietorships of folks that are operating as a business to 1 and 2 employees to 10 to 20, and up to the classic definition of 500 employees, which the federal government uses for these purposes. But we also recognize that small businesses are not just about economic generation, but they are really the foundations of our communities where we live and work. They are where we get the means to raise our families, to live our lives, and many small businesses, of course, are integral parts of their own communities as we go about our lives. This is particularly true in our Hawaii, where I always tell my colleagues what we all know, which is in Hawaii, small business is king. In Hawaii, we have 135,000 small businesses, at least by the calculations of the Federal Small Business Administration, or SBA. That's one of the highest percentages of small businesses in the entire country. In fact, by SBA's calculations, 98 to 99% of all businesses in Hawaii are small businesses. So we don't have the big corporations, we have small businesses. And they employ directly some 275,000 people throughout Hawaii, which I think is about 55% of our total workforce in Hawaii. So Hawaii is all about small business. And yet I think we all know in spades, especially if you are in or anywhere close to a small business in Hawaii, that it is tough to operate a small business in Hawaii. Tax levels, regulatory levels, high costs in areas such as shipping, for example, just to take one, technology availability, cybersecurity, which we'll get into here, and finally just basic workforce availability are all challenges that our Hawaii small businesses face. Now, these are the focus of efforts by all levels of government, federal, state, and county government. And I'm not the state or county government representative, and so I'm not going to be able to speak here today to areas that the state and county governments are taking to assist small business, or for that matter, to editorialize as your federal representative on what I think they should be doing, because I think there's a lot that more that should be done for small business at those levels of government. But I am, of course, your federal representative in the United States Congress, and your federal government is particularly focused on small businesses. So this webinar is primarily about letting you know what federal assistance is out there and how to get it. That's my mission here today. And I have 3 great guests that you can see on the screen here to help me. First of all, a couple of logistics. If you have any questions at all, please post them up right here on our live chat. You can also email them to ed.case@mail.house.gov. If somebody is watching that email, you can also call my district office at 808-650-6688, but mainly just put it in the chat here. Or go to case.house.gov for any questions after the fact. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do here today, and those are logistics. These are my guests, but before I go there, I want to recognize and pay my own personal respects to a real giant of Hawaii small business, a colleague and a friend who we just lost, and that is Senator Sam Sloan. Sam was, of course, best known as a longtime two-decade Hawaii state senator representing East Honolulu. But Sam was much more than that. He was larger than life in many ways. He was an economist and a lawyer by training. He claimed the economist side of it, but he always denied the lawyer side of it. He advised the Federal Small Business Administration, so was deeply involved in some of the things that we're talking about here. And he chaired our primary small business organization in Hawaii for decades, the Small Business Hawaii, which became known as Smart Business Hawaii, originally founded by Lex Brody to focus on small business, but Sam took it over and ran it for many decades. I was honored to be a board member of Small Business Hawaii for 4 years, from 2007 to 2011, as I recall. Worked very closely with Sam. This was quite a person, colorful, fearless, very knowledgeable, very dedicated to small business, to Hawaii. And he's just one of those people that made the world better. Controversial along the way, but always had the right goals in mind. And so I just want to say thanks so much, Sam, for your dedication, and you're going to be truly missed. With that, as we all follow in Sam's footsteps, I'm going to introduce my guests quickly, and then we'll come back to you. First of all, Mark Spain is the Hawaii District Director of the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration is our federal agency, which is tasked with and directed at assisting our small businesses throughout our country, the SBA as we know it. Mark has a career in business, an MBA from California State University, has worked in business, and he is the district director not only of Hawaii, but the Pacific. So to include all of our territories throughout the Pacific, the Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, American Samoa, and also the compact countries as well, where the compact countries being Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands, where we also provide small business assistance as part of our agreements with those countries. And Mark is very, very much involved right now, especially with Guam and the CNMI, because of course they have suffered a very devastating typhoon, which has really crippled them in many ways, and they need a lot of help. Jimmie Collins is the Chief of Planning and Operations at our Hawaii State Office of Homeland Security. Incredibly wide travels and experience level, 35 years in the federal government in all levels, focused on a lot of strategic national and homeland security issues. Just some of her service includes the Department of Defense, the Department of Treasury, the Department of State, the Department of Energy, National Nuclear Security Administration, with overseas tours in Asia and the Middle East, as well as widely traveled. And we are so fortunate that she now works with the Hawaii State Office of Homeland Security, where she focuses on homeland security. And she is here to speak in particular to what I think is one of the largest areas that small businesses need help with, need to be aware of, need assistance with, and that is cybersecurity. I can tell you in no uncertain terms that given what I see crossing my desk here in DC from all aspects, cybersecurity is a real threat to all of us in our personal and our business and our government lives. And malign actors, as we say out there, are consciously utilizing cybersecurity to sow discord, but also just to threaten, extort, et cetera. And these are not just individuals or criminal syndicates. Sometimes these are countries themselves. And so this is an area that we all need to be particularly sensitive to. Chris Rachal, did I get that right? I hope so, is the director of our Hawaii Minority Business Development Agency Business Center. Chris also has an MBA, in his case, from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, has worked in a number of businesses, is a teacher at the UH Schuyler School of Business, our leading business school. The Minority Business Development Agency is one of those adjuncts of our federal government that seeks to focus small business assistance specifically on areas that are particularly relevant to Hawaii. Women-owned businesses, where we have some of the highest percentages in the country, of veteran-owned businesses, where we have some of the highest percentages in the country, minority business ownership, where we definitely have the highest percentage in the country, especially Native Hawaiians, but not exclusively Native Hawaiians. And so these are areas where we can particularly use and accelerate a lot more help. So those are my guests. Before I turn to them, I want to just provide a little bit of an overview of what I see going on in our federal government of assistance to our small businesses, and where I kind of see that I enter into this particular picture. If you look at small business overall, and your federal government in particular, I think it probably comes down to a couple of areas of key overall effort. First of all, it's just taxes. Taxes have to be fair. They have to be even. They have to be appropriate to need. We all know, and I come out of the business world myself, that if you have high levels of taxation, that's going to cripple a business pretty fast. And yet we have to collect taxes in order to fund our governments for all kinds of reasons, whether they be national defense or public safety or just basic business stability. And so that balance has to be correct. And when it's out of balance, that's when it starts to really bite, especially in small businesses where the profit margins are a lot narrower and a lot more sensitive to change than a larger business that can really absorb change in many ways a lot easier. Closely related, regulation. We do need some level of regulation, whether it's antitrust regulation or product safety regulation, et cetera. But too much regulation cripples a small business also, with unnecessary paperwork, but also just the regulations themselves. People spend, a lot more time complying with federal regulations than they do running the business, and those two areas easily are the most important areas that we always need to worry about, and that I always try to worry about. What is the impact of a tax? What is the impact of a regulation on our businesses, especially our small businesses? And then we have a whole range of areas that fall in kind of two categories related. One is just opportunities. How can we maximize opportunities for our businesses, including our small businesses across our country? How can we facilitate, for example, export opportunities for our products by negotiating trade assistance, by providing trade assistance? We have small business trade assistance to our Hawaii small business to help them sell their products in places like Tokyo and Seoul and other places that particularly want our products. A whole range of assistance. And then finally, just providing opportunities for small businesses through various, big picture and more directed assistance to small businesses. We try to do all of these things in one way, shape, or form. I do all of this generally, and particularly I do this through my House Committee on Appropriations, which is our federal funding committee. We have several committees in Congress, but we have only one in the House that actually funds our federal programs, and that is the Appropriations Committee, where all funding goes through, including all of our small business assistance programs. And so I'm responsible for funding the Small Business Administration for getting that funding levels right. And that also, by the way, gives me a great platform and opportunity to influence the overall process. Since my job is oversight, I'm able to, for example, point out areas where Hawaii and the Pacific Islands are a lot different in their small business challenges than the continental United States small business. As an example, how can we develop and fund programs that are of particular importance in those areas? I clearly value partnerships, not only with my colleagues in Congress, but also back home with folks that are on the call with me, who I work with outside of just putting on webinars, the Small Business Administration generally, and Mark and Jimmie and others in particular were absolutely critical for Hawaii to come through COVID as we did, which was remarkable given the impact that we suffered during COVID, the most impacted state economically. Also, one of the states with the highest level of federal government assistance per capita of any of the states out there. And that was a result of strong partnerships between our government levels and others. I also focus a lot on, as I've already kind of talked about, the unique parts of Hawaii, given that we do have the highest level of women-owned, minority-owned, veterans-owned, Native Hawaiian-owned businesses. How do we get those programs funded and developed so that they work? Where is the assistance for you on those kinds of programs? How do we facilitate those export opportunities that I talked about? Clearly, in the area of cybersecurity, same basic drill. I serve on the Appropriations Committee. Our subcommittees, including the Homeland Security Subcommittee, which I'm a member of, fund many of these cybersecurity programs on the domestic side. So how do we focus there? And then finally, of particular importance to Hawaii, how do we have opportunities for federal government contracting for our small businesses? We have a major federal government presence in Hawaii, primarily our Defense Department, our military, but not exclusively. We have many areas of potential assistance to our small businesses because we do, as part of our national small business efforts, facilitate small business contracting with our federal government. I'm going to tell you straight up, this is a struggle for our small businesses because the big businesses have much more of an inside track on that federal government contracting, and it's a real struggle to continue to get small businesses heard when they need to be done. But as we do this well, we also in Hawaii get the benefits of that federal government presence, especially the Defense Department. And so, again, on my Appropriations Committee, I serve on two subcommittees. One is Homeland Security, which I've already talked about, but the other is the Defense Subcommittee, which has responsibility for our entire federal defense budget, which is at about half of our overall budget. And so I'm able to talk with them about making sure that programs are available to our small businesses in Hawaii. Yeah, I could go on, but I'm not going to. I really would like to get to my guests. And so I will repeat what I said at the very beginning. If you have any questions, add them into our chat room or email me at ed.case@mail.house.gov or call 650-6688. And if you don't have any questions, much of what I'm talking about is available to you at my website at case.house.gov. Let's start with you, Mark, and let's just go with a really big picture question. Tell us about the Small Business Administration. What is it? What is your charge? Generally, what are your programs? Did I adequately represent what SBA is all about? And
yes.
Talk about Hawaii in particular and the Pacific Islands.
Aloha. It is a very simple 3 C's, Congressman Case. It's called access to capital. We call it capital. That obviously is borrowing power. I think the other thing we all talk about with some level of regularity is counseling. And in that sector, we have 4 support groups that we work with in the counseling arena, which is the 2nd C, and that is our Small Business Development Center network based here in Hawaii that handles all the neighbor islands as well as Oahu under the leadership of Joseph Burns. And their phone number can be reached by going to hisbdc.org. And then you can go to the island of which your residence is located and you'll find the person that can assist you. Those costs are fully funded by the SBA, so there's no cost to you as the recipient, as a constituent, whether you're on the Big Island or on Kauai. And then in addition to the SBDC, which is our most well-known, we have 3 other locations. We have the well-known volunteer team called SCORE, and they can be reached at hawaiiscore.org. We also have the Women's Business Center. It's located close to the Iolani Palace location in the city, which is at the YWCA under the leadership of Colleen McInerney. Then we also have, of course, the Veteran Business Outreach Center located also at Manoa under the leadership of Dennis Kwok. So those are the counseling resources, all free to the constituents. And then we get into contracting. I'm working very closely with the leadership of our general contracting and business development team. We're bringing some resources to the islands because of the length of time we're separated from the East Coast. Sometimes our general contracting has not been really robust for those that want to become a socially or economically disadvantaged firm in the federal contracting space. We have found that Washington, not Washington and Congressman Case's office, we're referring to the inside the Beltway call centers. They're not available to us during most of the business day. So we're working on having that focus westward. We're also going to be focusing on the Pacific Islands in the month of August. I'm going to be going into the Western Pacific along with some of my Hawaii-based 8A firms, as we call them, to grow the business. We have a need to increase our small business community. Since 2010, Congressman Case, we've had a reduction of 50% in those 8A firms that have been in the contracting community. Part of those growth, I should say, happened in the Great Recession of 2009, and they've graduated from the program. We are now going in eagerness to involve a growth plan for Oahu, the neighbor island, particularly Maui, which has great potential for contracting, and also on the Big Island. In addition to that, we're going after Guam itself. I would probably want to talk to you offline about that to give you more detail, because I don't want to make it too lengthy. I know we have other speakers. Our focus, frankly, at this point is to really make sure that our contracting resources are brought to the Pacific in the same level that we have on the continental United States. And that's my mission, is to increase the general contracting opportunities for our Hawaiian firms, as well as hub zones. We have parts of the island, the Big Island particularly. I know it's in Congressional District 2, but we do have hub zones here. But we also have Oahu-based firms, which is in your district, that know they can partner with other firms in the in the Big Island of Guam, which is the primary island, notwithstanding CMNI, we have the ability to bring about our hub zone capability that will help firms be able to have access to general contracting. Also, in the area of our program offices, and I'll be brief with this, we have those that work with our DBED called the STEP program, called the Office of Innovation and Investment. That's a program office comparable to our field presence, which is called the Office of Field Operations. We also have the Office of International Trade, which help with the import and export. We're doing work now on the island here in Oahu that's going to focus on what can we do to export product, not only to Japan, which has been the typical recipient of our activity, but for the first time, as you look at the oldest U.S. Marine still serving in Vietnam, and I say serving in quotes, we now have opened up the opportunity for DBED to go into Vietnam, where American businesses are being sought after by Vietnamese counterparts. So with that being said, I think we really sort of cover the bases here: capital, counseling, contracting. We have a lot to share. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can obviously know Congressman Case knows how to reach me, but if you want to take note of my email address, Thornton, spelled THORNTON, .Spain, like the country is spelled, at sba.gov. Be more than happy to take your inquiry if you have specifics about SBA's program and services. And with that, Congressman Case, I return it back to you.
Thank you so much, Mark. And Kira, my staff, could you just type into the chat room his email that he just gave, thornton.spain@sba.gov. Let me do a couple of quick follow-ups while we're on this. So first of all, let me come back to this just in a second, but when you talk about access to capital, I'd like you to talk about the SBA loan programs. Okay, but hold that just for a second. You referenced in your counseling the second of your 3 C's, SCORE, which I think stands for Service Counselors of Retired Executives, right? I forget exactly what the acronym is. I was a member of SCORE for
Yes.
a number of years. I really enjoyed that. But I forget the exact, but fundamentally what it is business executives that volunteer their time under the SBA's umbrella to help people that are in business or that want to go into business. That's a great resource. And we can give you information on that. You referenced 8A firms in your third one, which is federal contracting, and 8A is shorthand in our world for federal government contracting preferences given to small businesses and various kinds of businesses. In other words, we want to kind of offset we want to even the playing field between big businesses who are far more adept at getting federal government contracts and small businesses who often get kind of left out of the process. And we want the availability of federal government contracting benefits to flow to all businesses. And so 8A is a section of the law that says, in so many words, you've got to give some preferences to various categories: women-owned, veterans-owned, minority-owned businesses. And that's really, really critical to us here in Hawaii. So yes, I definitely want to talk to you about, and these are firms that apply for 8A contracts. And as Mark said, they qualify into the program, and then in an ideal world, they qualify out of the program because they don't need the 8A preference to get the contracting anymore. They shouldn't be on it forever. That's the idea. And so I am concerned about the reduction in 8A qualified firms. I want to talk to you about it. You referenced hub zones, and that stands for historically underutilized business zones. And so this is an attempt nationally for us to say, look, there are parts of our country that just have not gotten the benefits of overall economic activity. They don't have the same level of small businesses that they should. And so therefore, we're going to come in and on the theory that a solid economy in these communities is one of the best ways to lift them up. We are going to come in and provide specialized assistance in these zones, which are called hub zones. And we do have hub zones in Hawaii.
Yes.
And we should definitely take advantage of them. And like you said, and like I said at the outset, I don't really care whether you're in Maui or Hawaii Island or my district, we're all going to try to help you.
Right.
Okay. Let me come back to questions, but I just want to clarify a few things there. I'm sorry, Mark, if I could also ask you to go back and spell out the loan programs from the SBA.
That's a good point. The loan programs are two. We have subsets within each program. Let's talk about the 7A program. The 7A program, which like the 8A, is a statute that's been abbreviated, so ease of reference. That is the most diverse program series we have. Under the new rules, which Congressman Case, the recent Small Business Committee had discussions on how they could liberalize, if you will, some of the underwriting guidelines that would make it more, shall we say, accessible to businesses, particularly here in Hawaii. And the 7A program is designed to be working capital. It's designed on a what we call Community Express. There's Community Advantage. There's a number of different programs, and that's way, if they wanted to email me at thornton.spain@sba.gov, I can give them actually an underwriting grid where they can look at it real conveniently. We do have that available on email request because there is a number of underwriting criteria, and also the balances that you're eligible for can go anywhere from $50,000 up to $5 million. So we do have quite a diverse underwriting matrix. It's a single page. We can make that available to those who would like to have more information. All your lenders, and there are a number of lenders here in Hawaii that do SBA 7A loans. Now, when you go from working capital, you go to maybe ability to acquire real estate. Now that is called the 504 program, and that is a combination where the lender goes 50% of the loan balance up to $5 million. It can be used to acquire real estate. It can be used to acquire equipment. And also that is supported by a debenture that's done by our local community development center called HEDCO. And HEDCO works with the banks in harmony, and they can fund 90% of the requested loan amount. And then the following 10% is coming from the borrower themselves. But that is something that the major banks, let's say First Hawaiian as well as Bank of Hawaii, they sometimes more focal on that particular program, where if you go into the 7A program, you're seeing more like Central Pacific Bank, Hawaii USA, Territorial Savings Bank, the more what we call middle region lenders, they focus on the 7A program. The larger lenders historically in Hawaii are focused on the 504. So each lender basically has their preference on which program they use, Congressman. And I think it's really important, if there is any more additional question that they would like to ask, we can definitely give further guidance. But also our resource partners that I've identified also know the programs very, very well. But if anyone doesn't want to list to all the people that we have access to, my email address, I try to make it as simple as possible so we can give you the kind of information if you're a little bit shy of using the chat box.
Okay, thanks so much. And just again, to kind of take this down to real elemental level. Any business knows that, especially a beginning business, let's say you have a great idea, you need some money to back you up to start that business. So startup capital or working capital. Let's say you're in the middle of your business and you want to expand, or for that matter, you are facing a rough patch and you need to see yourself through. These are all capital questions, money questions. How do you get that money? If you stay within a traditional lending framework, oftentimes banks or other financial institutions are unwilling or unable to offer you that capital because it doesn't meet their traditional lending requirements. They want a track record, which is always kind of a chicken and the egg situation. How do you get money to develop a track record if you don't have a track record? We in the federal government through the SBA offer banks and lending institutions incentives under certain circumstances to provide those loans where the bank and lending institutions risk is minimized. The federal government takes on some of that risk for the public policy purpose of getting small businesses started or to survive and prosper. So that's what we're talking about. And the only real way to talk about these details is to get a deeper dive into them, which it's not particularly productive to do today, but the resources there to go and chase those. Okay, thanks so much, Mark. I think, Chris, I'm going to go to you next, just because a lot of what you do is kind of a follow-on to what Mark does. So where do you in particular and the MBDA, Minority Business Development Agency, kind of enter into the picture, and what are your services and how do people avail themselves of what you do?
So thank you, Congressman Case, for inviting us to the conversation. So we're located out of the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and the Scheidler College of Business. What we tried to do, and we actually work quite a bit with the SBA. And so what we try to do is we offer access to capital, access to contracts, and access to networks for small businesses. Small business owner for quite a bit. I know that small business is a backbone of America. They are. And I thank you for stepping up so it's not being the broken backbone of the U.S., because we are working hard to try to sustain them and help them move forward. And when I say small business, I just want to take a step back. And I know that there's large business and there's small business. There's no such thing as medium business, but I'm going to say that we actually help small business and medium-sized business. We have training events as well. So what we try to do, and we just had one with SBA that just ended, was about a week ago, the DBA, Mark. And what we did in that training event, where we took small businesses and helped them write capability statements, kind of like the resume. We actually got them into the system, the SAM system, so they can start contracting. And then help them along the way to understand what are the different tools that are available to them. We have other events, like something that's called Boots to Business as well. And we also have another free service that our, we like to call them clients, but the people that work with us can get. It's called Govology. And what that does is we have a lot of training videos that shows them what's available through the SBA. If you do want to sign up for an 8A application, how do you do it? Where do you access the docs? And it goes through all the government, not all, but most of the government things that are available to small business owners.
Let me ask you just a real basic question. What actually is your relationship with the SBA? You're an independent agency, correct?
So we are an independent agency as well.
Right.
But I think through being on the island for decades, as long as with SBA too as well, here, everybody's Ohana, right? We're all family and we try to work together. And Mark and his staff have just been very accommodating. And a lot of the agencies work together. I know Mark had mentioned a few, but I think he left out the PTAC too, because the PTAC as well, they're also part of the organization. So a lot of us will actually work together.
I'm sorry, what does that stand for, PTAC? What is it?
What's PTAC?
PTAC stands for Procurement Technical Assistance Corporation, but also to point out, and Chris is right, the SBA funds the four I mentioned. The MBDA is actually part of the Department of Commerce family. And then, of course, the DOD is involved with the collaboration with the PTAC. So there's three agencies, SBA on the floor, MBDA, of course, with the Department of Commerce, and the PTAC comes Congressman Case under DOD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the bottom line here is that you're all trying to get the same thing done.
We collaborate, yes.
Okay, so the SBA is an independent agency. It does exist particularly and specifically to assist small business. MBDA is part of the overall U.S. Department of Commerce, but focus, as your name implies, on minority businesses, right? And Chris, and just so I can clarify here, what defines a minority business? What do you have to do to be able to take advantage of MBDA's services?
So we don't turn anyone away. We don't turn anyone away, and we work with everybody, large and small businesses, because there's a lot of overlap. And sometimes when you help one business, it actually helps another business in a way. But typically, you just have to be a minority. Now, there's controversy because what we say is, even if you're not traditionally a minority, you can go out and get that some of those DNA tests. Sometimes they point out that maybe we're all minorities.
Well, I guess I would argue that in Hawaii we are all minorities. I'm a minority just as much as I mean, from a Hawaii specific perspective, right? Where nobody's in the majority there. Okay.
We also help with financing too. With our clients. So if a client is looking for contracts, financing, or networks. And so with the financing, sometimes we'll help them get together with SBA, because SBA does have a lot of financing options. We also have close relationships with banks, lenders, and so I also teach at the business school, and a lot of the students that were my former students end up working at the banks. So I have like a decade and a half.
You got a network.
Of a network. So somebody will have a particular issue and okay, well, take this one to Central Pacific or Home Street Bank, or take this one to American Savings Bank. So we do have a quite large network of financing. And so with our organization, we have to hit certain numbers. So we have to help clients close about 100 million in contracts, about 100 million in financing every year. And if we don't, they close us down. So we need you, and we need to help you. And so every year we close a tremendous amount of financing, and we do a tremendous amount of contracts. Last year.
So just to kind of clarify in my mind, you're not limited by the classic definition of a small business, right?
No.
Yeah, you're available to business. It just so happens that in Hawaii, our businesses are small businesses, or medium, as you say. Because many people would say that a business of 400 or 500 employees isn't exactly small, and yet that's on the SBA side, some of the, or at least federal government contracting, one of the delineating factors there. So let me ask you this question. Let's say I'm a small business, right? And I really don't know where to go. I don't exactly, I've got an idea. I'm trying to get the capital. I'm trying to get assistance. I'm trying to get counseling. Who do I go to between the two of you? Can I go to both of you, or what's the, do you guys have any kind of, understandings as to who does what in Hawaii?
Chris, if you want to comment, then I'll do a quick follow-up for the congressman.
Yes, so what happens is we often have a lot of these events. And when you go to the event, you'll see at the different tables where we'll have SBA, SBDC, PTAC. We'll have a lot of different agencies. And so we actually work together quite a bit. And if somebody were to call us and then were to ask us, well, I need this, then we would refer them out, and Mark's team and some other teams as well would refer them back. But I think we work together pretty seamlessly in order to help the small business.
I like
And I
the
can
idea of
comment
having
close-
two options.
Let me comment and close out that thought. One thing we do at the SBA, we have more of a structure that eliminates us from being more involved with the referral business. We can't refer one. Whereas the other, what we'll call, in the case of MDA, they have greater latitude on who they can do a referral. Their regulatory structure is less limiting. And so Chris has a great ability, because of what he said, students become part of the banking community. He can make those referrals on a one-off, whereas we can't do that. So really, the more you get into our service relationships, those that we fund and those that we partner with, they have much greater latitude to be flexible and not under the same, shall we say, regimentation.
Okay, great. And I'm sorry, Mark, just one more, I'm sorry, Chris, one more question. So you said that you had benchmarks you had to meet of 100 million in financing and 100 million in federal government contracting per year. I guess, first of all, when you say you, is that Hawaii only, or do you go beyond Hawaii into the Pacific? What's your kuleana?
Thank you for asking that question. So we do business in Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, India, Bangladesh. We have clients here that do work all over the world.
So it's these are Hawaii businesses that are doing business in those other countries, and that counts, right?
Yeah, some are Hawaii. We have other businesses that want to use our services that are in other states because our office is pretty efficient. Last year we closed. Last year our office closed a little bit north of $25 billion in contracts.
Wow.
Hawaii office, more than all the other ones combined.
$25 billion of that's federal contract, right?
With a
Well,
B.
so also exports too as well.
Right.
We have clients that sell LNG and fuel, and so that was like 7 billion.
So you're not in danger of not meeting the $100 million threshold, I guess.
We did it by February this year.
Well, you're finished already for the year?
By February, we're done. Yeah, but that doesn't stop us.
I do want, I really want to, again, highlight the PTAC side of your responsibility. What was it again? The procurement.
It's Procurement Technical Assistance Center under Bruce Powers is the director.
He's amazing.
It's really, really important for us in Hawaii that as we host our military, which, I believe we should do. I believe it's our obligation to our country. That doesn't come without a cost. And the economic benefits of our military being in Hawaii should be maximized every possible opportunity. And that's something that I drill home all the time in my work, especially on, defense appropriations and otherwise, and to our military partners. In so many words, it's like, well, if you want a good, solid community military relationship, which is critical in Hawaii and is especially strained as a result of Red Hill and the consequences of Red Hill, then one of the ways back is to provide a direct economic benefit to our Hawaii community from your presence. And they're very conscious of that. They are trying very hard to kind of, beef up and streamline and outreach from Department of Defense, which can be very large and unwieldy sometimes. And the natural inclination of the procurement officers in the Department of Defense and in the Pentagon and here in Washington, D.C. is to use people that they're familiar with who may not be from Hawaii. But the message is, no, you need to do that because first of all, you should be doing that. And second, it's in your interest to do that, to develop that relationship and foster that relationship. So I'm just going to always drive this home. If we can collectively assist our businesses to access military contracting, we should chase that every opportunity we possibly can. And there is a lot of DoD spending that is coming into Hawaii. We're talking billions of dollars in the next 10 to 20 years. And shame on us if we don't take advantage of that. Okay.
So here's real quick. So I want to save this date down, October 25th. And so on October 25th, we have done, well, not on that same date, but we do a DoD forum with Department of Defense. We'll have the Office of the Secretary of the Navy, RVs, the Office of the Secretary of the Air Force, Space Force, and Army as well, that will come to this forum. And we bring access to them to our small business owners. And so that would be at the Country Club, and we would love if you would join us. If you have time.
I'd love to join it. I'd love to join you if I can, and I'd love to publicize if I can. So send me the information. I'll try to get it. Okay, Jimmie, we've been off on our tangent here. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation.
Definitely.
Definitely want to highlight cybersecurity. Like I said at the beginning, I think this is just really, really critical. I think we all, those of us that play in this space, know what the exposure is. Obviously, there is exposure at the government level, throughout government. We could talk about the defense and homeland security components, but beyond that, we could talk about malign actors, as we said earlier, whether individuals or criminal enterprises or governments themselves trying to, in so many words, mess up our governments. We tend, though, to get complacent when it comes to non-government. For example, our infrastructure in Hawaii is operated primarily by private business. So eco telephones, water and sewer is municipal, but these could be targets of cyber attacks. But our businesses also, and there are many examples, more than we all want to talk about, of businesses, including very small businesses, being attacked. When you have your entire business on the line and you get hacked and basically extorted, that's your entire livelihood right there. So this is not to be taken lightly, and I'm really happy that you're joining us. So tell us, what the exact issues are, what the problems are, and what the resources are to help, especially small businesses, with cybersecurity.
Yeah, certainly, and thank you so much for having me on for this conversation. I'm learning a lot. Not small business administration; those types of things are not things I often get exposure to. So I'm really happy for the education, but more so, cybersecurity is one of our core missions here at the Office of Homeland Security, and we do understand that it can be particularly challenging for entities like your small and medium-sized businesses that you've been talking about. And for those who aren't familiar with the mission of our office, we are looking at critical infrastructure security, as the Congressman mentioned. We do work in concert with our DoD counterparts and law enforcement and a variety of threats that face the state. But as far as cybersecurity goes, let me kind of paint a picture for you, and not necessarily to scare you, but to let you know how important it is for you as business owners or prospective business owners to really pay attention to this. 64% of companies worldwide have experienced at least one form of cyber attack. And more than 800,000 people fall victim to cyber attacks each year. And the numbers are doing nothing but growing, dollar-wise, impact-wise, victim-wise, and just the attack surfaces, if you will, or the modes of being made vulnerable and victimized through cyber. So it is incredibly important that our small and medium-sized businesses, I mean, you mentioned, sir, the breadth of small businesses across the state. That's one level of concern because it is so impactful, but also because these businesses, their primary business is rarely ever going to be cybersecurity. Cyber is an enabler, generally speaking, on how you do your business, how you move your money, how you impact and interact with your customers. And it's rarely ever like your first line of duty, if you will, what your function is. And because of that, it rarely gets the kind of attention resource-wise that the challenges we're facing daily now really require. And so what we've kind of taken on board here, not our mission really is focused on the security and safety across the state. And because of that, the small business element is a really crucial element for us. But I will say we're not particularly well resourced to help that level of businesses or entities. We typically do see our resources to go towards helping our critical infrastructure sectors or our just the provision of services through the county and the state governments. So I'm really concerned about how we take the resources we do get and make sure that they can have positive impact in the business community. One of the things we're doing first and foremost is outreach. We're looking at every opportunity we have to communicate, to educate, and to really put some impact statements out there for folks to pay attention to. Recently, we had the great opportunity to work with the Japanese consulate here to have a conversation with their diaspora. And many of those are business owners or, in fact, reporters, newspapers, those types of things, to try and elevate the conversation for folks who really, it's not their day job to try and pay attention to all of these challenges in the cyber arena. So that's one of the things we are doing. And I can look at my calendar and probably no week goes by where I don't have some kind of an outreach. And we have several that we're teeing up that we're really excited about. We were asked by the CIO Council here in the state, as well as Cyber Hawai'i, a nonprofit that focuses on small and medium-sized businesses, to come talk about cybersecurity and workforce development, things that can happen or that can help our broader communities. We're partnering with our federal collaborators, so the FBI, DHS, to actually put on a symposium coming a little bit later. It's on the 15th of June. So these events are really, it's all of us trying to make a concerted effort to inform, to educate, and then to share what resources that each of us individually can bring to bear. Because it is a collective challenge. None of us have enough resources to do anything all by ourselves. Including responding. And that's why we partner so tightly with our federal agencies, because the response requires a lot of their technical, expertise. And so, and finally, I'd like to just kind of wrap that up and say, if there's any questions whatsoever, if you think you've been a victim, if you just really want to learn more, please do reach out to our office. I'm more than happy to interact directly. We've got resources on our website. And the congressman in his office has all of that contact information. If you want to reach out through them, might be a little more efficient. But yeah, we're in it with the larger team to try and help protect across the state, including our small and medium-sized businesses, not just what you would typically think of, what the state cares about. It's right down to the core of our residents here, and that constituency matters a lot to us.
Okay, well, thanks so much for that. And I totally understand the focus on our critical infrastructure. That is something that we definitely need to focus on in Hawaii for a lot of different reasons. Anybody that wanted to systematically, hurt our country in the big picture, especially in a defense context, would think about Hawaii, and they wouldn't just be thinking about our military in Hawaii. They would be thinking about the infrastructure that provides our military with services, for example, which is not technically part of the federal government, yet is, of course, part of the federal government from that perspective. So back to just kind of our standard small business, 5-person small business does a pretty good job of, or let's say that they're reliant for that matter. Let's say they're small business, Hawaii small business. They sell, clothing to, or an agricultural product to Asia.
Mhm.
They do it all on the internet. They've done it just right. They've modernized. They got 5 to 10 employees. Maybe they have one person that's an information technology specialist, but they're sitting here concerned about whether their cyber security prevention is solid, and they're sitting here thinking about whether they've taken full advantage of the opportunities to get assistance. So all 3 of you, where do they go? Should they go within your shops, or where would you send them from a cybersecurity perspective? So let's just start with you, Mark.
Yeah, the Office of International Trade provides that. We also have emerging leaders, alumni. I mentioned this to the staff before we went live. We have one professional who's a retired Navy commander who is here in IAEA, Pacific Rim Defense. Their expertise is highly sought after. They're doing right now work with the Taiwan concerns, working directly with the flag admirals that are in Taiwan, and also working with retired Admiralty here in Washington. He's in Washington today, in fact. So I will be more than happy to share that contact with Jimmie, but we do have that built into our international trade component. And obviously we can provide that information when it's appropriate.
So you have either people immediately accessible or referral sources for a small business that might want to dig a little bit more on what's available on cybersecurity, because it sounds like that guy in IAEA is pretty busy with Taiwan and other stuff. So it's more a matter for me of just having a resource.
We have a cadre, Congressman. We have a cadre. Okay,
cool. And Mark, I don't know if you're still on, but Jimmie, I think you already spoke to this. How do people, does the state of Hawaii itself offer this kind of counseling and service to a Hawaii small business, or is it a referral really for a small business to other resources, or in partnership with other people in Hawaii? How does the state of Hawaii handle it?
Well, so we have a couple of lines of effort. One is through our State Fusion Center. We actually have weekly bulletins and more frequent bulletins when necessary that can reach anyone who wants to subscribe to them. That talks about current threats in particular. If it's a business that believes that they've done everything right, then probably what they need is just to keep a pace with the challenges that we're facing. That's a great resource, and that's right through our office. And I'm happy to connect anyone that wants to get into the loop on our cybersecurity bulletins and so forth. The other is to actually work with some entities that reside here in Hawaii. An organization I mentioned, Cyber Hawaii. There's the CIO Council, there is InfraGuard, there's an association called ISC Squared. We try and stay completely abreast of all of those efforts so that when we do encounter in particular someone who may already be in a situation where they've been compromised, but otherwise so that they can continue to keep their education up, stay really current on what the threats are, and learn from their peers, to be quite honest. We really pride ourselves in building organic capabilities here because we just in our environmental, our situation here in the middle of the Pacific, we want to make sure that we can rely on each other before we need to rely on some outside source. So we're definitely building out the Hui, I don't know what you call it, like the super Hui, where you've got multiple entities that are focused on different aspects, but they're collectively kind of rowing in the same canoe. And that's what we're here to do. One of the big, I think you mentioned the grant program that the federal government has provided to the states. We're going to take full advantage of that. And that includes doing a workforce development strategy effort And that's workforce statewide, not just our own needs for IT professionals, maybe in the state government, for example. So all of those are activities that we want to make sure that we are engaging across the community. And that absolutely has to include the small and medium-sized businesses. You know, we do focus on critical infrastructure a lot, but I will say, because of the economic status, if you will, that your small and medium-sized businesses have in Hawaii, that heft is super important to us. I mean, we learned that in spades during COVID. The challenges to our small and medium-sized businesses are challenges to the whole state. And if we don't help and support and move them forward wherever they may need that assistance, then we're not doing the state one bit of good for economic security. And that's important to our mission too.
Okay. Chris, I don't know if you heard the question, but if somebody has a question on cybersecurity, preparation, counseling, assistance, can they come to you? Do you have that resource available to them, or can you where would you refer them if they had that question for you?
So they can come to me. So I did take the CMMC classes and got trained for that. So that's the cybersecurity maturity model classes. So I have been trained in that, and I am working on another PhD as if I need one, but another one in computer science. So I have a little bit of knowledge in it. I'm not going to say a lot, but like a fair amount of knowledge.
Well, where would you refer somebody if they came in for MBDA assistance and their particular concern was the cyber side of things? What would you point them to a federal resource, or partner with some of your partners? Like Jimmie was talking about, local organizations that are specialists like Cyber Hawai'i and ISC Squared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think what I need to do on this is probably just gather from each of you your best practices on these questions, because I am increasingly getting these questions. And so rather than answer them on an ad hoc basis, try to gather together some
100% Congressman
Yes.
Case, 100% on that. I'd like to be
Yes.
able to share, Jimmie. I think we can do a hui between the three of us, because we are getting whether it's state or whether it's mainland or even international, collectively, I think we have a powerful hui to put together.
And I also, just from where I sit here, I also just wonder from a big picture whether many agencies have assistance, but I'm not sure that it's all fully coordinated. I guess that would be my comment. So that's kind of a takeaway for me, is to dig into a little bit more and figure out on a national basis, because I know Homeland Security, for example, has a pretty robust, set of precautionary measures. I'm not sure they always reach down directly into small business, or take account of 5, 10, 15, 20 person firm that can't afford to hire a full-time cybersecurity specialist and IT person. We have a question here from a gentleman who wrote in, and I'll just read the question without identifying him. In so many words, he suffered a workplace head injury and was left with very severe health consequences, and wants to start his own business. And the question is, is there assistance available to folks like him who may be disabled, may be disadvantaged in terms of starting assistance? Chris, you're shaking your head yes, so go with it.
So I'll say this. So it depends on the field that he was in. If he is military and got injured in military, there's something called SDVSOB, which is Small Business Disabled Veteran. So that'd be my first question. Like, is he service disabled military? Yes, then that there's a lot of assistance there. If it were like, and I'm not going to get too much into the law part, but if he got injured at work and it's a workman's comp thing, and possibly there's retraining that would help him get some retraining to get into a new field. And yes, we would definitely assist them. So it would depend, I would say, case by case. If it's SDVSOB, definitely. We can definitely, and also what what type of business are they getting into? Right.
Sure. Yeah, those are good questions. I think the question is, where do they start? And so, and I think you're correct to highlight veterans, because we have significant programs across the board to assist our veterans in their lives from service-connected disabilities. That's critical. But make an assumption here that he is not a service-connected disability, veteran. I think you're right to point out that they're certainly under state law, and if assuming that he says it was a workplace injury, so it's got to
I
be.
can be helpful in that
Okay,
regard.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. I'll be very brief. We would ask the first question, veteran or not. Then if he's the veteran, we would go to the Veteran Business Outreach Center under the auspices of Dennis Kwok, who of course is UH, and they would do everything from business plan for the startup plan. They would do everything for him in that regard. If he is non-veteran, I would send them to, if their veteran happens to be a woman, I would send them to the Women's Business Center if they're located on Oahu, or if they're beyond that and are located elsewhere within Hawaii, I would send them to the Small Business Development Center and whatever island they're located. And that way they can do the same thing from start to finish. They would prepare that individual to go through the necessary proper registration process for the state of Hawaii. Now, if it's somewhere else outside of Hawaii, we have the Small Business Development Centers in American Samoa. We have the Small Business Development Centers in Guam. We have the Small Business Development Center in Saipan. So we have the ability to do the fork in the road, veteran or non-veteran, male or female, as the case may be, and that's how we would direct the inquiry.
Okay. So I think the answer to the gentleman that wrote in, if you're listening, is yes. And I can offer my office's assistance to get you to the right place. Email me please at ed.case@mail.house.gov and just say that you're the person that was on the, I have your name here, so we will certainly respond to you. Okay. So here's a question that came in. What do you think about tech giants like Amazon abusing their power to crush the small businesses that use their profiles? First of all, does one of you want to speak to the basic underlying assumption of using their profile? So this is I guess a small business using an Amazon profile. I'm not sure I'm really following the question.
I can comment on that specifically. We do encounter that in other areas where there are large entities who come in, particularly if they have a certain NAICS code, that's a North American Industrial Code. We would then say Amazon is really specialized on what we call consumer-based deliveries. I just talked today in Vietnam, for example. One of my colleagues in Vietnam is opening up Vietnam to Amazon Prime. So we know we have messages that we can use to deal with that, because they may feel like David versus Goliath, but we do have methodologies to deal with that through our Small Business Development Center network in specific. We could be very helpful so they can get away from feeling overwhelmed to where they can feel energized. I'll just leave it there.
Chris, anything?
Yes. So can I take a step back and talk about the broader picture rather than just Amazon? A lot of large businesses, using the same words that he said, or he or she, sorry, where they crush small business. A lot of times when they have like contracts that come out, and again, I'm doing a broader picture, with contracts, they do have stuff that's called a set aside. And those set asides are there for like woman-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, hub zone. They have a lot of different distinctions. Now, there's something right now that I believe, and I spoke with the Undersecretary for Commerce about this, where in order for a large business to get some of these contracts, they have to have a certain amount of participation from, small business. Or some of these special distinction businesses, but they do have something right now out there that's called a waiver, where they can actually get a waiver and not give the business to the small business or the set aside. But I think that there's some legislation or there's policy that's coming down the road that will eliminate waivers. And so if we can do that, again, I'm not talking specifically about the Amazon case, but as far as large businesses really taking advantage of the small business. And when we have congressmen such as yourself, which are trying to champion the small business, you are actually helping us in order to stop some of these ways that the large business can abuse the small business.
Yeah, I mean, I would answer it in a big picture way as well. And I would just say that the entire point of this discussion is that we want our small businesses to survive and prosper, especially in a world which is seeing much more the centralization and increase in the size of businesses. And that's not good for anybody. I mean, it may be good for those businesses, but it's in the long run not going to be good for our economy to essentially have fewer small businesses and more big businesses. I think a balance is necessary. I don't have anything against big business, but I don't think that should be the only business out there, especially in a place like Hawaii. I don't want Hawaii to be, a place that is run by large businesses from.
I can follow on with that, Congressman Case. We have what we call a procurement center representative. His name is Larry Orr. He's based here at NAVSA. And what we have is we have an obligation under current legislation, which you're obviously, I know, familiar with, where there have to be 15% of the national contracting done by federal government has to be allocated to small business. Larry Orr is our local representative for Hawaii and the Pacific, whose responsibility is to make sure that the military commands are responsible for that allocation, for example. Similarly, there is a responsibility among general business called the Mentor Protege Program. So what Chris is referring to is excellent commentary, but we do have resources to make the overwhelmed become well served. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And going back to what Chris was talking about when Mark was speaking earlier about the 8A programs, that's what we're talking about, is a requirement of set aside of business for small business.
Right.
This is and I'll speak from my personal experience because I served on the U.S. House Committee on Small Business during my first time in Congress for 4 years. And that 4 years was almost entirely about preserving and expanding and protecting the set-aside programs from both the federal government and the larger businesses who found a million ways to get around them. What they would do, for example, would be talking about that waiver, which in some cases is necessary, where you have, for example, a large contract with national security implications. You cannot really locate the small businesses that can participate in that project, and it's there are reasons why you would want some form of discretion, but the discretion was being abused, and it was because big business is much more influential than small business in those circles, and because federal procurement officers want to get the job done. They don't want to take risks. They don't want to be burned if it doesn't go well. So they're really loath many times to try out a new business, try out a new small business because somebody else has a track record, and I don't blame them for it, but it's not doing the job for small business. And so there's various loopholes that were exploited. For example, the creation of a small business subsidiary for a big business that effectively was the big business. So then you have to go through an entire exercise of how do you actually define what a subsidiary is, and is that still a small business, or if it's a subsidiary of a big business, is it any longer a small business? Where's the beneficial ownership if you want to get into legalese on it? And these wars are still going on, to be honest. And I think there's good news and bad news. They're still going on, but many of us are far more conscious that we need to actively work for small businesses. The Mr. Orr that you referred to, for example, I believe that was as a result of our congressional delegation pushing for a very specific allocated Hawaii Department of Defense representative to ride herd over the assurance that small businesses in Hawaii were going to get their fair share. And so it's incumbent on all of us to try to take advantage of that position and make sure that we have plenty of work for Mr. Orr to do.
Congressman Case, let me comment on that specifically, and we can talk about it offline, but he's the only PCR in the nation that we know at the moment that is successfully appealing cases with the military commands. But there are some times, and I'm speaking to you candidly, where he's not adequately supported. And I think we can have a conversation about that offline, so you would take note. And when we get to the conclusion of our call, I have a special thank you to say for NPeace, one of the Native Hawaiian organizations that you earmarked. I have a new one for you that I think will be very interesting, but I'll hold that request when you're ready to wrap.
Okay. Well, I have a great interest in making sure that Mr. Orr continues to walk point, as we say, on these issues, because it needs to work. And if the people of Hawaii are not perceiving a benefit from our military being in Hawaii, then that's an invitation to the relationship going south at a time when we most need the relationship to go in the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
Okay. I am actually ready to wrap because we're coming to the end, and I'm sorry. What can I do to protect my business from cyber attacks? We have, to the person that asked that, what I'm going to do is if you can email my office, ed.case@mail.house.gov, we will summarize what we talked about on this program. And I will give you references to who to talk to about how to protect your business from cyber attacks. But I really appreciate the question. That's exactly what I wanted people to focus on. I'm in this call. Okay, let's wrap then. Jimmie, any final thoughts about anything you've heard, any comments, any areas that we need to focus on, anything you want people to know?
Well, actually, just feeding on that last question we got, I actually do have a presentation specific to small businesses about where they can get resources, and if they are unfortunately made a victim, where they can get support. So I'd be happy to share that with your office if you want to share that with folks who ask those questions. It runs the gamut between state and federal kinds of resourcing. So absolutely want to get that out as far and as wide as we possibly can.
Is it online?
No, it's a PowerPoint presentation, so I can make that available electronically. We haven't posted it online, but that does give me a thought that we probably ought to summarize it and get it on our website.
I think so. That's a good thing, because it's just easier for people to reach. But I will accept it gladly, and I'll share it out.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for your work. Chris, anything to conclude on?
Yes. And I'm typing it in right now, our website. So we have a newsletter that we put out. I know SBA does, and a whole bunch of other organizations too. And so what we try to do is to give people a heads up of what's coming down the pike. Like sometimes we'll have like meetings, or we'll have training seminars, or things that we're working with other organizations on. And on this newsletter, it'll come out every so often. We also have just updates that our social media person, Dre, will put out, that we'll put out every, maybe once, twice a week. That way, if SBA is doing some event and we're teaming with SBA or one of the other events, and that way they can get plugged into the system. And then if they do have questions, usually at these events, there's a host or just a myriad amount of organizations that are at a lot of these events. And so hopefully once they get plugged into the system, then they can start taking advantage of some of the support that we have out there. Not just us, but all the other organizations too as well. So I'm typing that in right now. mbdacenter.com. And so if you have anything that you need, come to us.
Okay, HonoluluMBDAcenter.com. HonoluluMBDAcenter.com. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, this is a very unique thing. In the celebration of the holiday, or the solemnity of the holiday, we have a unique opportunity following the NPeace development that you did 2 years ago. Agent Orange is now comes front and center in a way, because I thought it would be interesting if we can bring this home to Hawaii. 58,000 names are on the Vietnam Wall, Congressman Case. There's 426,000 men and women who died prematurely from Agent Orange. They're not on the wall. We're at 500,000 people that died in effect from the Vietnam War. We have an opportunity to give back to the nation of Vietnam, the sprayed area that's over 500,000 hectares of land. And we have a research capability that really would merit your attention. You can go in greater detail offline. That could be done through, well, Auburn University has expressed interest, but I sure would like to bring it home where maybe it's a very nominal amount, not as much as the end piece earmark that you had identified. I would welcome, Anika has my contact information to share this with you. The Vietnamese government would not be the buyer. It would be U.S. Agency for International Development, who I will meet in Vietnam next month. We could put together a solution for Agent Orange. Would heal the soil in a country where we weren't served. I'll share with you offline when you have time.
Really appreciate those words, Mark. I would definitely want to follow up with you on that. And I think it's important also to acknowledge again, so many injured and dead as a result of Agent Orange and other toxic chemicals.
Yes, the burn pit.
And we have been trying to do the right thing by them for the last couple of years.
Right.
The PACT Act that we passed last year
Right.
opens that up significantly. And one thing to note, in the midst of all of the hue and cry over the debt ceiling and the negotiation, which is again why I'm back here, is that we definitely preserve the mandatory funding to actually take care of people that are qualified for assistance under the PACT Act. And so I think we're going in the right direction, but there's a long way to go still. And so the efforts that we can pursue, especially with Vietnam, are ones that I definitely would support. So,
It would be an honor if you would be my guest at the United States Marine Corps Ball, November 10th, 2023 in Hanoi, Vietnam. It would be an honor to have you there. Ambassador Napper would be honored as well. By that time, we'll have perhaps put together a plan of action similar to what you did for NPeace for 2024. Pardon the emotion, but it still rings.
I completely understand. And I thank you for your service.
You were well
I thank
served.
I thank you for your continued service. I mean, you're all public servants like me, and you're serving, and we all have our ways to serve. But the service in our armed forces deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you,
All right.
Chris.
Well,
thank you, Jimmie.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
your time this afternoon in trying to assist our small businesses. By the way, I'm just going to tell my staff, I see this comment, put the website in Facebook chat. So I'm not sure what's going into Facebook chat and is not, but if you could put these websites in there that's been referred from Chris, for example, that would help out our viewers. So what I'll do here to try to wrap this up is we're going to reach out to each of you for your contact information, for your resources information. I'm going to try to centralize it, consolidate it, and get it out to people, or at least make it available to people. So, Jimmie's PowerPoint and the resources and references that Chris and Mark spoke to. And I want to say again to the folks that are listening, thank you so much for joining us. We want small business in Hawaii to survive and prosper, and we're all committed to that. If you have any questions whatsoever about anything we've talked about or anything else, you can start with me at ed.case@mail.house.gov. You can also go directly to my website for information on what I'm doing, whether it be small business or otherwise, as well as all kinds of ways to get in touch with me. My staff and I are here and available to help you. And my website is case.house.gov. With that, I say from Washington, D.C., mahalo, aloha, be safe and be well.
Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Hey, guys.